huge thank you for that introduction. A huge thank you to Phocuswright and to Google for having me. Hopefully you can all hear me. In a year of relentless new technology platforms as we all work from home, I'm delighted to see that we have another one to add to the list. Very exciting indeed. And thank you so much to everyone for attending today. What is an incredibly important topic. I know there can be Zoom fatigue. There has been a lot of looking at screens. So the fact that you're taking time out to explore these issues is really, really important. So thank you. Just before I go into today's topic, I just want to give you a little introduction to myself. As I was introduced, I'm Simon Gallow. I'm an advocate in the UK for UN Women. UN Women is the UN agency for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. And actually, most people might not know, we've actually only been around since 2010. So we are the baby of the UN system. And really what that means is that the world has only recently woken up to gender equality and the wider equality movement. And I'm looking forward to talking to you more about that today. But you may also notice that I am a man. And I often want to start these sessions by explaining my motivations for why I'm so committed to the gender equality movement and why I have such a passion for UN Women's work. And I always give two reasons. The first is that I was sick and tired of gender inequality being framed as a women's issue, to be solved by women and fought for by women, when most of the issues lie with men, with masculinity, with my gender. So from workplace inequality to violence in public places, until we truly engage men in the conversation and solution for gender equality, women will continue to face the barriers that they do today. But secondly, I have a firm, deeply held belief that equality for women is progress for everyone, including men. So whether that is men who are more able to speak about their emotions, be more open about their sexuality, follow non-traditional career paths such as marketing, nursing, primary education, or whether they just get to spend more time with their children. Equality for women is progress for everyone. And that is why I'm so committed to this movement. And that is why I'm delighted to be speaking to you today. Now I'm going to attempt to share my screen and hopefully everything will work well. Hopefully this works. I can't see anyone, but I hope I hope you can all see the screen. Hopefully I'll hear some shouting if not. So today, all good? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. So today, the topic is from crisis to recovery, achieving an equal future in a post-COVID world. Of course, post-COVID world isn't necessarily the right way of phrasing it. We are still living with the impact of the pandemic, but we have had to learn a huge amount of lessons. And now as we look to the future and we arise from the crisis, the immediate crisis, we need to make sure that we put equality at its heart. Today, I want to explore the challenges that women, girls, and other marginalized groups have faced across the world. I want to talk about some of the business solutions as we recover from the pandemic. And I also, despite all of these challenges, want to give a sense of optimism and why I believe this is a hugely exciting opportunity for change. And so, to look at the challenges, as we have all now become incredibly aware, COVID-19 was and is a health crisis, but it has also been a crisis of equality. And it has impacted women and girls in three key ways: health, safety, and work. Taking each of those in turn. Health. Most importantly, we must all remember that we have lost mothers, sisters, and daughters across the world. I've been looking at these statistics now for the past 18 months, and I have to say that every time I update the presentation and I see that the numbers have gone up, I find it, of course, deeply troubling. And I'm sure many people on this call would be affected in many different ways. And while this is a very large statistic, we must remember that there is a life, there is a human, there is a tragedy and a family behind every single one of these lives. So primarily, there has been a loss of life. But we must also recognize that it hasn't impacted people in the same way. Not only have we lost life, but if we look at the data, Black women, as an example, are 4 times more at risk than white women. And this comes to the point that when we consider the impact on health and on life, we must consider the intersecting identities and how some people's experiences and backgrounds can interact and reinforce to lead to double disadvantages. But not only this, 70% of frontline health workers are women, and that rises up to 90% in certain countries around the world. This has been incredibly stressful. Incredibly stressful. And in terms of mental health, women are twice as likely to experience anxiety as men. So while in terms of life, there has been reasonable parity in terms of the number of lives lost, the impact on wider health on women and those of marginalized identities has been profound. And again, as I said, we must remember there is a story behind every single one of these statistics. And one of the stories that I always keep so close to my heart is Linda Udibala, who is an incredible nurse in London who had 5 children. She worked for the NHS for 20 years. She was an incredibly passionate and devoted nurse. So much so that she inspired all of her 5 children to go into the health service. But she sadly lost her life to COVID while on duty. And we must never, ever forget these names and these stories. But not only have there been health impacts, there have been impacts about safety, what we at UN Women call the shadow pandemic. In the run-up to the pandemic, 250 million women around the world had experienced domestic abuse. And this is just the number that we know about. Up to 90% of incidents of domestic abuse often go underreported. When societies are under stress, women suffer. And we saw in the UK and across the world that there is an increase in incidents of domestic abuse. In the UK, reported incidents increased by 50%. And that was just around physical violence in the home. But we also saw an increase in other types of abuse, such as financial coercion, which we saw go up by 85% in the UK. Because of restrictions, because of lockdown, because of a general structural level of stress and social anxiety, women bore the brunt in terms of their own personal safety. And finally, work, the economic impacts. And these are the ones that we now really have to pay attention to as we emerge economically from the crisis. Women make up 60% of the informal economy. Women are 25% more likely to live in extreme poverty. Women do 3 times as much domestic work as men. Indeed, 75% of the 16 billion hours of unpaid care are done by women. This all builds up and accumulates to mean that women have less economic power. There is a pay gap, as we all know about, and women globally earn 77 cents for every dollar that a man earns. And particularly in the sectors that we're talking about today, we need to be increasingly aware of the insecurity and potential inequalities that may expand over the coming months and years. And what all this means is that before the pandemic, It was going to take 100 years to narrow the gender pay gap. And according to UN Women's research, we may have lost 25 years of that progress. Yes, we've made progress since the 50s and 60s, but I am impatient for change. And if we really want to make sure we do not lose all the benefits that we've made over the past 30 years, we need to make sure our action is bolder, more radical, more practical than ever, and puts equality at its heart. And as the UN Secretary General says, COVID-19 could reverse progress. Women's leadership must be at the heart of resilience and recovery efforts. And so, in terms of what businesses can do, they need to take bold action to create inclusive organizations fit for the 21st century. And critically, they need to do three things. Demonstrate bold leadership. And what I mean by that is not only your chief executives and your C-suite saying the right things, using inclusive communications and language, role modeling behaviors. That's critical, absolutely important. We should absolutely expect that from our leaders. But we should also be demonstrating bold leadership by treating this as a business critical problem, using actions as well as words. So using data, using data to define problems, defining business cases, actually investing resources and money into solving some of the most challenging problems that women and other groups face, demonstrating that bold leadership. Secondly, reimagining the workplace, learning the lessons from the past 18 months to increase flexibility, to consider about childcare, to look at flexibility around parental leave, and also look at some of these other key social challenges, such as the ones raised through Black Lives Matter, but also considering some of the other challenges I've spoken about, such as domestic abuse. These challenges have been exposed and exacerbated. Now is the time to use our imagination and think about the workplace in different ways. And finally, play your role in the community. We just heard brilliantly from Blair in the previous piece that businesses are no longer just looking at business for business sake. They want to play a global role, a social role, and have an impact in their communities across the world. And so many businesses have stood up to the plate to use their time, their talent, and their treasure to have an impact in their communities. And we should be doing that as we look forward. And this is a great example from the UK. A hotel chain in the UK in London provided 82 rooms of secured accommodation for domestic abuse survivors during the pandemic. Look inwards, think about what your USP is, think about the impact that you can have on the world, and then go out there and do it. And so to give you a few short case studies of each of those examples that I mentioned before, showing bold leadership. It can be done. There are case studies. Bob Moritz, the PwC chair, increased representation of women in senior leadership positions from 17% to 45% in 15 months. Well, where there is a will, there is a way, and this can be done. Looking at the next piece, reimagining the workplace. Nick Reed, the Vodafone CEO, introduced domestic abuse policies that have now been used by 95% of Vodafone offices across the world, including 2 weeks of paid leave for women survivors of domestic abuse. You'll notice that both of these are men. They are he for she champions at UN Women, showing that men can be true leaders and advocates in the gender equality space as well. And finally, Karen Blackett, really demonstrating this fantastic commitment in terms of playing the role in the community. She is the UK Group CEO, which is an advertising company, and invested £2 million this year in promoting 6 global media campaigns, raising awareness on gender-based violence. This is real leadership that we need to learn from. And I know so many people attending the conference today have got their own amazing examples of leadership that I would love to hear more about after the session. But as I said, I'm optimistic. We have a unique window of opportunity to make change happen, and I really believe we can do so for 3 reasons. 1, we're having the conversation. These issues are now being discussed. Yes, we've spoken about workplace inequality and gender pay gap in the past, but issues such as domestic abuse, issues such as intersectionality and looking at the experiences of women who come from diverse backgrounds, we've not always had the language for that. Now we do. Secondly, men are getting engaged. I've had more men getting in touch with me than I've ever seen before, saying, what can I do to be a truly inclusive leader? And goodness me, even Prince Harry got involved in our He for She campaign. So that's a real inspiration, if nothing else. And finally, we're using our imaginations, from the economic responses to the crisis to the vaccination programs. We are really beginning to understand the level and stretch and breadth of human thought and leadership. We can be big, we can be bold when we want to. Now we should apply it to responding to some of these inequalities. And so the final message I have for you is, now we've learned the lessons of the pandemic. Now we've realized how many of these inequalities we really need to put at the top of the agenda. And now is the time for women to rise.
I've been truly inspired, and I know others will be too. It is time for us to rise as women leaders, taking action to conquer the pandemic and come out stronger.
We are in the middle of a major global crisis. The coronavirus knows no borders.
The world is collectively experiencing human distress unlike ever before.
A virus anywhere is a virus everywhere.
You cannot turn a blind eye from the long-term consequences that will likely imprint our children and youth.
The only solution that comes to my mind is the inclusive recovery of the whole world.
We all face the same enemy, and we stand to gain by bringing the full force of humanity together.
Each country can start to prioritize during this moment when the world is being asked to pause, that we can come back fitter and better.
The UN's COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund is a chance to unite the world around our common goal, to support the world's most vulnerable people.
For the victims who are seen and unseen, who are known and unknown, for the heroes who we applaud and who we sing, and the unsung heroes. That's why we rise.
We can do it working together, but we need to respect each other, to see each other, to hear each other.
And becoming more empathetic and more kind towards one another is the only way we can fight this pandemic.
In our global village, solidarity is the only option.
I am therefore calling on governments in every country in the world to stand up
and to let the world's most vulnerable people know they are not alone.
United, in partnership with each other, with collaborations with one another, acting out of empathy, compassion, and unity.
These solutions can be found right here within our communities. They know better how badly their life has been impacted.
Let's not waste this moment in time to really react to combat COVID-19.
The United Nations has made a call for all countries to work together.
Join us. Let's turn this global challenge into new opportunities.
Robust international cooperation, not international competition.
Global institutions and governments must work together.
Who else can win this battle without solidarity?
This is a moment that unites us.
Stay strong.
Learn from this human crisis to recover better by building back better together. My call is simple. It's our turn.
And so finally, and I know I've gone slightly over, so apologies to the team, 5 actions that you can take right now. Please do get in touch with me if you want to work with UN Women and or one of our campaigns, such as the He for She campaign. My email address is there. You can volunteer with us by going to our website to offer your time and talent to support our critical work, including in Afghanistan at the moment. Engage your husbands, sons, brothers and friends in our He for She at Home campaign. which is engaging men in the conversation around gender equality. Please stay in touch across social media. And if you can, and only if you can, please do donate. Just £15 can provide essentials for a woman during quarantine in countries that are experiencing this around the world. And I leave you with one very simple but important quote from Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who's encapsulated the extraordinary women leadership that we've seen through this crisis. We will get through this together, but only if we stick together. Be strong and be kind. Thank you.